Welcome. Tonight we will travel into the ancient North, where frost and fire once shaped the beginning of all things. This is the story of Odin the All-Father, a tale of creation, wisdom, and destiny. So lie back, close your eyes, and let these words guide you gently toward rest. Stay awake if you wish to hear every detail, or drift into sleep as the story carries you into dreams. And don't forget to subscribe, so you can return for more calm stories, night after night. Now, let us begin. In the beginning, long before men built their halls of wood, long before warriors raised their swords beneath the northern sky, long before even the gods themselves existed, there was only Ginnungagap. Imagine it now. Close your eyes and picture it. A vast yawning void, a chasm without end, without up or down, a place where there was no earth, no sea, no sky. There was only silence, a silence so deep that it pressed against the soul like an invisible weight. This was not chaos, as the Greeks would say. It was something colder, older, a gulf of nothingness, stretching between two extremes. On one side of this void lay Niflheim, the realm of ice, of darkness, of biting frost. There, icy rivers flowed from the wellspring called Hvergelmir, and mists rose endlessly, a breath of cold that seemed eternal. On the other side lay Muspelheim, the land of fire, ruled by the fire giant Surtur, whose flaming sword blazed at the edge of the void. Here was no silence, but the roar and crackle of eternal flame, heat without mercy, light without rest. Between these two realms stretched Ginnungagap, and where the icy breath of Niflheim met the burning winds of Muspelheim, something wondrous began. The ice began to melt, and from the droplets of water, life was formed. The first of all beings was the giant Ymir, the ancestor of the frost giants. He was enormous, a being of raw power, his body dripping with frost and fire combined. He was neither entirely good nor evil, but primal, the embodiment of untamed creation. And as he slept, strange things occurred. From the sweat beneath his arms, new giants were born. From the union of frost and fire, his descendants multiplied. And so the race of Jotnar, the frost giants, came into the world. But Ymir was not alone. From the melting ice also came forth Audhumla, the great cosmic cow. Her body was vast. Her milk flowed in endless streams, and it nourished Ymir, keeping him alive. She licked the salty blocks of ice, and as she did, something new emerged. On the first day a man's hair appeared, on the second a head, and on the third day, the full form of a man stepped forth. Buri, the first of the gods. Buri was strong, handsome, and noble. From him would come Bor, his son, and from Bor's union with Bestla, a giantess, were born 3 sons, Odin, Vili, and Vi. These were the first of the Aesir, the gods who would one day rule Asgard and shape the fate of the 9 realms. But before that destiny could unfold, a great conflict stirred. For Ymir, the giant, continued to bring forth more of his kind, and the world groaned under the weight of giants. Odin and his brothers looked upon this being with fear and hatred. They knew that as long as Ymir lived, his offspring would cover all that might ever be. So they resolved to act. The 3 brothers rose against Ymir. They fought with courage and fury, and at last they struck him down. Ymir's blood poured out in floods, a deluge that drowned nearly all the giants. Only a few escaped, such as Bergelmir, who found safety upon a hollowed tree trunk. From him the frost giants continued their line, And then Odin and his brothers took Ymir's vast body, and from it they shaped the world. His blood became the oceans. His flesh became the soil. His bones became the mountains. His teeth became the rocks. His skull became the sky itself, stretched wide above the earth. And from his brain, they made the drifting clouds. They set sparks of fire from Muspelheim into the heavens, creating the sun, the moon, and the stars, so that light would shine in Ginnungagap. They placed the sun upon a chariot, pulled by the horses Arvikr and Alsfr, and the moon upon another, drawn by Hrimfaxi, whose mane dripped with frost. Thus the world took shape, not by accident, but by the will of Odin, Vili, and Vi. They stood at the edge of this new creation, and from Ymir's eyebrows, they built a fortress, a barrier to keep out the surviving giants. This fortress would be called Midgard, the realm of men. But Midgard was still empty. There was no life, no humans to dwell within. And so, one day, the brothers walked along the shore, and there they found two pieces of driftwood. One was ash, the other elm. They picked them up, and together they breathed life into them. Odin gave them the breath of life. Vili gave them thought and movement. Vi gave them speech, hearing, and sight. Thus the first humans were born. Ask and Embla, the ancestors of all humankind. They were fragile compared to giants and gods, but they were gifted with spirit, with will, with the spark to endure. And Odin looked upon them not only with pity, but with purpose. For in mankind, there was something even the gods would one day need: remembrance, sacrifice, and belief. And so the 9 realms began to take form. At the top stood Asgard, the realm of the gods. Below was Midgard, the world of men. Further still lay realms of mystery: Alfheim, home of the light elves; Svartalfheim, the dark dwarves who forged in stone; Jotunheim, the wild land of the giants; Vanaheim, the home of the Vanir gods; Niflheim, frozen and bitter; Muspelheim, burning and bright; and beneath all Helheim, the land of the dead. In the center of all stood Yggdrasil, the world tree, its roots and branches holding together the cosmos. Its leaves whispered in the wind, its roots reached into wells of wisdom, and its branches brushed the very heavens. And Odin, he stood there, at the dawn of all things, knowing that this was only the beginning. The world was born from sacrifice, and it would be ruled by sacrifice. He would not merely be a god among gods. He would become something greater, the All-Father, the one who bore the weight of creation, and sought always to understand its mysteries. And so begins the tale of Odin, not with triumph alone, but with blood, with struggle, and with the eternal hunger for wisdom that would define him for all time. Now that we have wandered through the mists of creation, and witnessed the birth of Odin in the vast emptiness of Ginnungagap, we continue onward into the shaping of the cosmos. This chapter is the story of how Odin, with his brothers Vili and Vi, brought order to chaos, how they raised the sky, carved rivers and mountains, and gave the first breath of life to mankind. It is a tale of beginnings, of how the 9 realms came into being, and how the destiny of gods and men was woven from the very first day. So let yourself sink deeper into the calm. Breathe slowly, and let the soft rhythm of this story carry you further into sleep, as we begin the next part of Odin's journey. In the beginning, before the world had its shape, before the sky stretched above and before the seas rolled below, there was only the void. Ginnungagap, vast and silent, lay between the realms of fire and ice. From Muspelheim came the flames, wild and restless, their heat surging and licking at the emptiness. From Niflheim came the frost, heavy, slow and endless. Between them, where the breath of fire and the chill of ice touched, life first began to stir. It was in this strange collision of elements that Ymir, the first giant, came into being. His body was enormous, his steps shaking the very void, his breath forming winds that carried frost and mist. Alongside him, nourished by the primeval cow Audhumla, other beings emerged, creatures of ice, children of frost, and among them the earliest traces of gods. Ymir himself, however, was no peaceful creature. He was raw force, untempered by order, embodying the wild chaos of creation itself. From Audhumla came sustenance, but also something greater. As she licked the salty ice for nourishment, the shape of another being emerged from the frost. Buri, ancestor of the gods. Buri's line gave rise to Bor and in turn to three sons who would stand apart from all others: Odin, Vili, and Vi. Unlike Ymir, whose strength was blind and uncontrolled, these three carried within them purpose, will, and the ability to shape the chaos into something new. Odin, even as a youth, was unlike any other. His eyes, sharp and endless, seemed to look not just at the present, but into what lay beyond. He was thoughtful, deliberate, and already bore the weight of destiny in his presence. Vili was bold, carrying courage and determination in his heart, while Vi embodied sacredness, ritual, and the unseen truths that connected all things. Together they were not merely children of creation, but shapers of it. For a time, they dwelt in the shadow of Ymir, watching his great, chaotic form move through Ginnungagap. But as they grew, they came to see that the world could not exist in balance so long as Ymir remained. His immense hunger devoured all around him, his footsteps crushed what little had begun to form, and his unchecked force threatened to undo the fragile beginnings of creation. So the three brothers gathered together in secret. Odin spoke first, his voice calm but filled with resolve. Chaos has given birth to us, but we cannot let chaos rule forever. If we are to bring shape to the void, if we are to give meaning to what has begun, Ymir must fall. Vili's eyes blazed. Then let us not wait. His strength is great, but together ours may be greater. I will bring my courage and I will not falter. Vi placed his hand over his heart. And I will call upon what lies beyond, the unseen, the sacred. Together we shall end what must end. So it was that Odin, Vili, and Vi prepared to face Ymir, the first and oldest giant. The battle was not small, nor was it swift. Ymir rose like a mountain, his footsteps echoing through the void. His roar was like thunder before thunder existed, a sound that shook both fire and frost. But Odin and his brothers did not yield. They struck with all their strength, with all their will, and with all the hidden power of their purpose. Together they brought Ymir down, and as his body fell, the shape of the cosmos was forever changed. From Ymir's flesh they created the earth. His bones became mountains, his blood rivers and seas, his hair the forests, and his skull the dome of the sky. Sparks from Muspelheim were set within that dome, becoming the stars. His brain was cast into the heavens, and from it the clouds were formed, drifting endlessly across the sky. At last, from chaos, order began to take shape. Yet Odin, even in triumph, was not satisfied. For though the land was spread, and the sea and sky set in their places, there was no life to move upon the earth, no beings to walk beneath the stars, no voices to give meaning to the world's silence. The three brothers knew that their task was not yet complete. So they wandered upon the new land, seeking what might come next. In time they came upon the shore, where two trees stood, shaped strangely by the wind and tide. One was tall and strong, an ash tree, its branches stretching like arms to the sky. The other was an elm, softer in form, its trunk curving gracefully as though shaped by unseen hands. The brothers paused before them, for they sensed something within these trees, something waiting, silent and patient, to be awakened. Odin approached first, laying his hand upon the ash. His eyes glimmered as he spoke softly. "This form is strong, but it lacks breath. Let it be filled with spirit." He leaned close, and with his breath he gave it life. The wood softened into flesh, the stillness stirred into movement, and the silence gave way to a faint heartbeat. Vili stepped forward next, his hand upon the elm. "This form is graceful, but it lacks will. Let it be filled with mind." He spoke with courage, and thought was born within the form. Awareness opened, and from unknowing came the first glimmers of self. Finally V placed his hands upon both forms, his voice quiet but filled with reverence. "They are alive, they are aware, but they are not yet whole. Let them be filled with destiny." So he gave them gifts of sight, of hearing, of speech, and of warmth. They opened their eyes, saw the world for the first time, and stood upon the new earth as beings of flesh and spirit. The brothers named them Ask and Embla, the first man and woman. They were fragile, small against the vastness of the world, yet within them lay potential, the spark of a future not yet written. Odin looked upon them with deep thought, already seeing what might unfold. Though they were mortal, though their lives would be brief compared to the eternal, they carried within them something the gods themselves did not: freedom and the chance to shape their own path. Thus mankind was born, and Midgard, the realm of men, was given to them. Odin and his brothers raised great walls around it, built from Ymir's brows, to keep out the wild and the chaotic. Within those walls humans would grow, build, struggle and dream, watched over by the gods, yet always free to choose. The world then had shape. The sky arched above, the seas rolled below, the land spread wide, and men and women walked upon it. But still Odin's heart was restless. For he knew that what had been shaped was only the beginning. The 9 realms awaited their order, and greater trials lay ahead. The new world stood quiet and young, its rivers running freshly from Ymir's blood, its mountains high with bones, its sky vast and domed above. Stars burned softly in the night, their sparks born from Muspelheim's eternal fire, yet they seemed distant and cold, like lanterns placed far beyond reach. The forests grew thick from Ymir's hair, green and full of hidden life, but silent, waiting for the creatures that would one day stir among the trees. The seas, spread wide and restless, rose and fell against the land, but no ships sailed upon them, no voices echoed across their waters. It was a world of promise, beautiful but incomplete. And Odin, more than his brothers, felt this incompleteness deep in his being. He gazed upon the 9 realms as they slowly came into place, and though their beauty was undeniable, he could not help but sense that much was still missing. A world, after all, is not merely land, sea, and sky. It must have harmony, rhythm, and meaning. He turned to his brothers, his voice carrying the weight of his vision. "We have shaped the bones of creation," Odin said, "but the spirit of the cosmos is not yet whole. The 9 realms must be ordered. Their paths must be bound together, or else chaos will seep again into all we have made." Vili, bold and forward, nodded. "Then let us bind them. Tell us where they must stand, and we shall raise them high and low." V, solemn and reverent, added, and let us sanctify them, so each has its own destiny, and none may fall into disorder. So the three brothers set forth again, their work not yet finished. They walked the length of the earth, traveled across its mountains and seas, and marked the places where the realms would be set. With careful thought they laid down their foundations. High above all they raised Asgard, the realm of the gods. Its towers would one day shine with gold and silver, its halls filled with laughter, song, and the weight of divine purpose. There Odin himself would reign, but even now, in its earliest beginnings, he saw it not as a place of luxury but of responsibility. Asgard was to be the home of the Aesir, the guardians of order, those who would watch over men and women below. Below Asgard they placed Midgard, the realm of mankind. Protected by walls forged from Ymir's brows, Midgard was fragile, yet destined for growth. Odin knew that here the great stories of mortal lives would unfold, stories of courage, of sorrow, of joy, of loss. Though men were weaker than gods, their freedom would give them strength unlike any other, and Odin could already sense their importance in the shaping of fate. Far beneath Midgard, the brothers carved out Niflheim, the land of frost and endless cold, and Muspelheim, the realm of eternal fire. These were not places for comfort or life, but places of power, reminders of the forces that had birthed the cosmos. They were realms of extremes where few would dare to tread, but their presence was necessary, for without fire and frost, the balance of all things would collapse. To the east they placed Jotunheim, the land of the giants, kin of Ymir. Though the brothers had slain the first giant, his descendants had been born from his blood and flesh, vast beings of stone and frost, raw power given form. The giants were wild and proud, and though they would forever oppose the gods, Odin did not seek their destruction. For he knew that opposition itself was part of the balance. Without challenge, strength would fade. Without enemies, purpose would wither. So Jotunheim remained a realm apart, yet forever intertwined with Asgard's destiny. To the west they shaped Vanaheim, the land of the Vanir gods, who even now began to stir in their own ways. The Vanir were different from the Aesir, closer to the earth, skilled in fertility, prosperity, and the cycles of nature. Odin did not yet know how their paths would cross, but he sensed that their story would one day be bound tightly with that of Asgard. Far below the roots of the world they set Helheim, the shadowed land of the dead. It was not a place of torment but of rest, cold, still, and quiet. Those who lived lives without glory, who died without the songs of battle, would come to Helheim to dwell in its silence. Odin marked it not with disdain, but with acceptance, for death too was part of the order. And finally they set Alfheim, the home of the light elves, beings of beauty and wisdom, who would dwell in the radiance of the sun. Opposite them, in the darker corners, would dwell the Svartalfar, the dark elves, who kept to the shadows beneath the earth, crafting secrets and treasures hidden from the light. Thus the 9 realms were ordered, each given its place, its balance, and its meaning. And at their heart, binding them together, stood Yggdrasil, the world tree. Its roots dug deep into the realms below, its branches stretched high into the heavens, and its trunk stood at the center of all things. The brothers had not planted it, for Yggdrasil had always been, but they recognized its power, its silent presence, and its role as the axis of existence. Around it, all life and all realms would turn, nourished by its roots, sheltered by its branches. When their work was finished, Odin stood beneath Yggdrasil and gazed upward into its branches. He felt the breath of the cosmos flowing through it, the rhythm of life and death, the whisper of fate itself. And though his brothers were content with their labor, Odin's heart was still restless. For in the rustle of Yggdrasil's leaves, he heard more than the sound of the wind. He heard questions, secrets, mysteries yet unrevealed. And Odin even then longed for answers. The brothers rested for a time, but Odin's thoughts never ceased. He looked upon the new order and knew it was good, but he also knew it was fragile. Chaos lingered always beyond the edges, waiting to return. The giants stirred in Jotunheim, muttering among themselves. The fires of Muspelheim roared, threatening to spill their heat into other realms. The frost of Niflheim crept silently outward, slow but relentless. Balance had been struck, but it was a balance that would always need to be kept. So Odin resolved that he would not only be a king but a seeker. His brothers had courage and sacredness, but Odin carried the burden of foresight. He would wander, he would search, and he would sacrifice if necessary, to learn what must be known to guard the realms. Already the path of wisdom opened before him, though it was steep, and though its cost would one day be high. For the first time Odin looked not only at what was, but at what would be. His gaze turned toward Midgard, where Ask and Embla lived their simple, fragile lives, and he wondered how their children's children would shape the world. He turned his eyes toward Jotunheim, where the giants plotted and waited, and he foresaw their endless enmity with the gods. He looked beyond even the stars into the threads of fate themselves, and though he could not yet see clearly, he felt the shadow of something vast, something final, looming in the far future. The work of creation was done, but Odin's journey had only begun. The world had been ordered, yet Odin knew that order was a fragile thing. He had seen it with his own eyes in the shaping of the 9 realms. Fire and frost lay always in tension, pressing against one another. Life and death walked side by side. Growth and destruction mirrored each other in every breath of wind, in every ripple of water. Balance was not the absence of conflict. It was the delicate harmony that emerged when forces opposed each other without collapsing into ruin. And Odin, more than his brothers, felt responsible for preserving this harmony. He could not rest long in Asgard, for his spirit urged him onward. Where Vili was content with courage and vie with the sacred, Odin longed to understand. His mind sought knowledge, his heart yearned for foresight, and his very being pressed him to wander into mysteries. So he began to travel. Across Midgard he walked, seeing the fragile lives of men and women, children of Ask and Embla, learning to kindle fires, to shape tools, to build simple homes of wood and stone. They were weak beside the giants, fragile compared to gods, and yet their eyes shone with something neither gods nor giants possessed, a freedom unbound by destiny. Men did not know the threads of fate as Odin sensed them. They moved through their short lives with hope, with fear, with love, with anger, with dreams unmeasured. And Odin felt a strange reverence for them, for though they were mortal, they carried within them the spark of endless possibility. Often he walked among them in disguise, cloaked not in gold but in simple garb, staff in hand, broad hat pulled low. He listened to their songs, their laughter, their prayers whispered to the night sky. He heard their stories by the firelight, tales of courage against storms, tales of sorrow in the face of death. They spoke of gods though they did not yet know them well, and Odin, hearing, thought of what role he and his kin must play. The gods were guardians, yes, but perhaps also guides, not to control men's freedom, but to help them flourish within it. Yet Odin also knew that men would suffer. He foresaw their wars, their betrayals, their hunger, their grief. And so he swore silently that he would give them gifts, knowledge, order, and hope, that would help them endure. These gifts would not be without cost, but Odin was already prepared to sacrifice for the sake of wisdom. From Midgard, Odin turned his steps to Jotunheim. The land of the giants was vast and wild, its mountains towering like the bones of some forgotten titan, its valleys carved by rivers of frost. The giants, kin of Ymir, looked upon Odin with suspicion and anger, for they remembered well the slaying of their forefather. Yet they did not destroy him outright, for Odin was cunning, and he came not always with challenge but often with words. He spoke with the giants, learning their ways, their strength, their craft. He saw that they too had wisdom, though of a different kind. Some spoke of the deep places of the earth, where secrets slept in stone. Others told him of the stars, of how they wheeled above and carried time in their patterns. Some whispered of magic older than the gods themselves, hidden in the bones of creation. And Odin, though careful, listened. He did not love the giants, nor they him, but he respected the knowledge they carried. For even in enmity wisdom could be found. Still, he knew that the giants were dangerous, restless, and forever opposed to the order he sought to build. They were strength without restraint, will without limit. Many times they rose against Asgard, testing its walls, and many times Odin and his kin stood firm against them. Yet Odin did not wish to destroy them entirely, for he knew that the struggle itself kept the gods strong. Opposition was part of the balance. Beyond Jotunheim, Odin wandered still. To the farthest reaches of the sea he went, where the waters roared without end, their depths dark and unfathomable. He learned of Aegir, the sea giant, master of waves and storms, whose hall beneath the waters glowed with light from golden cups that never emptied. Aegir welcomed him with wary respect, for though he was kin of the giants, he had a strange bond with the gods. Odin drank from his cups, listened to the songs of the deep, and learned that even the sea, restless and unbound, had its rhythms and laws. Through all these journeys, Odin's heart grew heavier with questions. He saw the 9 realms in their wonder but also in their peril. He saw that order and chaos walked hand in hand, that life and death were never far apart. He longed to know more, to know why fate wove its threads as it did, to know what end awaited the gods, the giants, and men alike. And so his gaze turned toward Yggdrasil, the world tree. For he had come to understand that the tree held secrets deeper than any hall, any realm, any ocean. Its roots reached into the wellsprings of being, and its branches touched the farthest stars. Beneath its boughs lay the well of Ord, where the Norns wove the threads of destiny. There, he believed, was the wisdom he sought. When at last he came to Yggdrasil, he stood in silence beneath its vast trunk. Its bark glowed faintly, alive with power. Its roots curled deep into the earth, drinking from hidden wells, while its branches swayed like arms of eternity. He laid his hand upon it and at once felt its pulse, the heartbeat of all creation, steady, endless, and unfathomable. At the base of the tree sat the Norns, Ord, Verdandi, and Skuld, past, present, and future. They were not gods, nor giants, nor men, but something beyond, beings who wove the fabric of existence itself. Their hands worked constantly, spinning and cutting the threads of fate, binding them into the tapestry that was the world. Odin approached with reverence, bowing his head, his voice low. Mighty Norns, shapers of destiny, I come not to command but to seek. Tell me what lies ahead. What is the fate of gods and men? The Norns did not smile nor frown. They did not halt their weaving. Only Ord spoke, her voice deep as the earth. We weave as it must be. Verdandi's voice followed, lighter, swift as the flowing river. What is. And at last Skuld, youngest and yet oldest, whispered, What shall be cannot be escaped. Odin trembled, for though their words were few, he felt their weight press upon him like the turning of the heavens. He asked again, desperate, Then tell me, how may I know what must come? How may I guard the realms against ruin? The Norns raised their eyes, and in that gaze Odin felt eternity. Wisdom is the price, they said together. If you would know, you must seek. And if you would seek, you must give. Odin understood. Knowledge was not free. Wisdom demanded sacrifice. Already he felt the path before him. A path of hardship, of loss, of giving of himself so that he might gain the strength to protect the 9 realms. He left Yggdrasil that day with his heart burning. His brothers saw only the ordered world, but Odin saw the shadows beyond. He had glimpsed the weight of fate, and he knew that if the gods were to endure, if men were to flourish, if balance were to hold, he must walk the path of sacrifice. And so began the All-Father's endless quest for wisdom, a quest that would take him to wells and worlds, to trials and torments, to acts of courage and acts of suffering. For Odin was not merely a king upon a throne, he was a wanderer, a seeker, a god who would give of himself for the sake of all. The roots of Yggdrasil whispered still in Odin's mind as he departed the well of the Norns. Their words clung to him, wisdom is the price. If you would know, you must give. Though no price had yet been named, Odin knew it would not be small. He walked away from the tree with a heavy stride, for he felt the weight of his destiny begin to press against his shoulders. But Odin was not one to sink into despair. Instead, he carried the burden as fuel for his purpose. His eyes turned toward the horizon, where the 9 realms stretched in their newborn beauty. He thought of Asgard gleaming faintly above, of Midgard fragile yet full of promise, of Jotunheim wild and dangerous, and of Helheim waiting silently for all who passed from life. He thought of the balance he and his brothers had forged, and of the storms already gathering to test it. One night, beneath the canopy of stars, Odin sat alone. The fire before him burned low, casting flickering shadows across his face. He stared into the flames, and the flames seemed to stare back, showing him glimpses of things yet to come. Armies marching, skies torn apart, seas swallowing land, giants rising from the mountains. And among them he saw himself, standing against the storm, a single figure holding back ruin. The vision passed, but the weight of it lingered. He whispered to the night, If sacrifice is the path, then let sacrifice be mine. If wisdom must be earned, then I will pay. For the 9 realms, for men and gods alike, I will walk whatever road is set before me. The stars above shimmered faintly, as though listening, as though granting silent witness to his vow. The days and nights that followed were filled with wandering, with seeking, with listening. Odin returned often to men in Midgard, moving among them in disguise. He taught them things in quiet ways, how to carve runes upon wood, how to honor fire and water, how to weave their lives with respect for the balance of the world. They did not know it was Odin who walked among them, for he took care to remain unseen as a god. To them he was only a traveler, a wanderer with strange wisdom in his voice. But he left behind seeds of knowledge that would grow for generations. And in the evenings, when men gathered by their hearths, Odin sat among them listening to their songs. The voices of mortals, raw and unpolished, carried a beauty the gods themselves could not forge. In their laughter he heard courage. In their sorrow he heard truth. In their stories he heard the beginnings of a great tapestry that would one day stretch across the world. More and more, Odin came to see that men were not small because of their mortality. They were great because of it. Their lives, brief as sparks in the dark, burned all the brighter because they knew they would fade. And Odin loved them for this, for in their fleeting lives he saw the reflection of eternity. But Odin's path also led him again and again to the edges of chaos. He walked the borders of Muspelheim, where fire raged and rivers of flame roared across the land. There he saw the fire giant Surtur, towering and terrible, his sword burning brighter than the sun. Surtur did not strike, but his gaze met Odin's, and in that moment Odin felt the certainty of doom. For Surtur was bound to Ragnarok, the end of days, when his sword would set the world aflame. Odin turned away, his mind heavy, yet his purpose stronger still. He walked also into the mists of Niflheim, where frost gripped the land in silence and the cold bit deeper than any blade. There he found streams frozen in place, mountains carved of ice older than the stars, and shadows that whispered of beginnings. The frost giants moved in the distance, vast and slow, their breath turning into storms. Odin watched them from afar, and though he did not love them, he understood them. They too were children of Ginnungagap, as much a part of creation as he himself. In these places of extremity, Odin came to see more clearly that balance was never still. It shifted like the tide, like the wind, like the flame. To preserve the cosmos he would need more than courage or strength. He would need wisdom that could see beyond the surface, wisdom that could reach into the heart of all things. One evening, Odin returned to Asgard, and there he spoke with his brothers. Vili listened with eagerness, eager always for action, while Vi spoke with solemnity, mindful of ritual and order. But Odin's words went deeper. "My brothers," he said, "we have shaped the 9 realms. We have given men their breath, and we have raised walls to protect them. But what we have built is not enough. I have seen what lies ahead. Chaos will not rest. Giants will rise, flames will roar, frost will creep, and in the end even the gods may fall." Vili's brow furrowed. "Then we must prepare for war. We must sharpen our blades, train our warriors, and make ready to strike down all who oppose us." Vi shook his head. "War is not enough. Sacredness must be kept. Ritual, order, law, these are what hold chaos at bay." Odin listened and then answered, "You are both right but not wholly. Strength alone will not save us. Ritual alone will not preserve us. What we need is wisdom. Knowledge deeper than the roots of Yggdrasil, broader than the sweep of the sky. Without it, we will stumble blind into ruin. With it, we may yet endure." His brothers were silent, for they could not argue with his words. And Odin, seeing their silence, knew that his path was clear. He would go farther than either of them dared. He would seek wisdom wherever it lay, whatever the cost. From that night forward, Odin became more than a ruler. He became a wanderer without end. He crossed the realms not as a king in splendor, but as a traveler, cloaked in gray, staff in hand, hat pulled low. He sought wells of knowledge, he sought voices of wisdom, he sought secrets hidden in stone, in flame, in shadow. And always he returned to Yggdrasil. Beneath its branches he found peace, but also questions. Beneath its roots he felt the pull of sacrifice, the whisper that he must give of himself to gain what he sought. He knew, deep in his heart, that his journey was only beginning. The shaping of the cosmos was done, but the shaping of destiny was not. The 9 realms were ordered, but their stories had yet to unfold. And Odin, more than any, would be at the heart of those stories. He lifted his gaze to the stars, his single eye gleaming with foresight, and he whispered to the night, I am Odin, son of Bor, brother of Vili and Vi. I am the Seeker, the Wanderer, the All-Father. The 9 realms are my charge, and I will not rest until wisdom is mine and fate is known. And the wind through Yggdrasil's branches carried his words like a vow across the realms. In the endless twilight of the 9 realms, beneath skies brushed with silver clouds, the figure of Odin stands alone. He is not yet the All-Father that songs will praise for eternity. He is not yet the supreme king of Asgard, nor the ruler whose wisdom surpasses all gods and men. At this moment he is a seeker, a wanderer, a restless spirit who knows that power without knowledge is fragile, and that wisdom, once earned, is the only treasure that can outlast the turning of ages. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the vast world tree Yggdrasil, its roots twisting through the underworld, its branches stretching toward the shimmering halls of the gods, and its trunk rising like an eternal pillar that binds together the realms of existence. This tree is the axis of all that was, all that is, and all that will ever be. And at its base, secrets slumber. Odin feels the pull of those secrets, as though the sap of Yggdrasil itself whispers his name. He cannot ignore it. No feast in Asgard, no golden hall, no song of warriors can quiet that hunger within him. It is the hunger for knowledge, a thirst deeper than any ocean, a fire that no storm can extinguish. Odin walks alone. The wind of Asgard brushes against his cloak, and the distant cries of ravens echo above him. These birds will one day be his companions, Hug in thought, and Mun in memory, but now they circle as omens, shadows of the destiny he has yet to claim. He travels across the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge, its colors shimmering beneath his feet like liquid flame. Beyond it lie realms unknown, Alfheim, the home of the light elves, Svartalfheim, where dwarves shape wonders in secret forges, and Jotunheim, the cold and endless land of giants. Everywhere he goes, Odin seeks fragments of truth. From elves he learns of beauty and song. From dwarves he learns of craft and endurance. From giants he hears tales of strength and cruelty. But none of these lessons satisfy him. They are glimpses, echoes of a greater wisdom hidden far deeper, where only the most daring dare to go. And so Odin's steps turn toward the dark places, toward the forbidden places, where knowledge is guarded not with words, but with blood and sacrifice. At the roots of Yggdrasil, where shadows breathe and time itself seems to pause, sit the Norns, 3 sisters who weave the tapestry of fate. Urd, who tends to what has been, Verdandi, who cares for what is, and Skuld, who shapes what is yet to come. Their hands move tirelessly, pulling threads from the well of destiny, knotting them together, binding gods and mortals alike in patterns too vast to understand. It is here, in the dim glow of their loom, that Odin first hears the whisper of his own future. Greatness awaits, murmurs Ord, her voice like water dripping on stone. Sacrifice awaits, says Verdandi, her tone steady as the heartbeat of the earth. An end awaits, Skuld intones, her voice as cold as the void between stars. Odin bows his head. He knows these are not blessings, nor are they curses. They are truths. The Norns speak only truth, and truth is heavier than any crown. Tell me, Odin asks softly, his voice trembling yet resolute. How may I learn all that is hidden? How may I grasp the secrets that bind the 9 realms together? The Norns do not look at him. Their eyes remain fixed on their threads, but their voices answer in unison. You must pay. And then silence. The loom keeps moving, threads twisting endlessly, and Odin feels the weight of their riddle press upon his soul. Guided by whispers, Odin seeks out Mimir's well. This well lies beneath one of Yggdrasil's vast roots, deep in the land of giants, where shadows stretch long, and icy winds cut through even the strongest armor. The well is no ordinary spring. Its waters are not meant to quench thirst, but to reveal the unseen, to open the mind beyond the reach of ordinary thought. It is guarded by Mimir, the wise one, an ancient being whose knowledge surpasses that of gods and giants alike. When Odin arrives, he sees Mimir seated by the well, his face weathered like stone, his eyes gleaming with the light of unspoken truths. "You seek wisdom," Mimir says, before Odin can speak. "Yes," Odin replies, his voice steady but his heart pounding. "I would drink from the waters of your well. I would see what is hidden. I would know what is unknown." Mimir studies him for a long silent moment. The wind whirls around them, and the rippling surface of the well reflects stars that have not yet risen. "The price is high," Mimir finally says. "The waters of knowledge cannot be taken freely. If you would drink, you must give me one of your eyes." Odin does not hesitate. He knows that wisdom demands sacrifice. He knows that nothing of true worth is ever gained without loss. With steady hands, he removes his right eye, the orb of sight glistening with divine light. He offers it to Mimir, who takes it solemnly and places it in the depths of the well. It sinks into the darkness, becoming one more secret among countless others. Then Odin bends low and drinks. The water is cold, colder than the heart of winter, colder than the void beyond the stars. But within that cold is fire, a fire of understanding, a blaze of visions that pierces through the veil of reality. As Odin drinks, the 9 realms unfold before him. He sees Midgard, the land of mortals, its rivers winding like silver threads, its mountains rising like teeth against the horizon. He sees Asgard, radiant and golden, its halls echoing with laughter and song. He sees Jotunheim, barren and cruel, its giants roaming like storms of flesh and bone. He sees the past, the birth of fire and ice, the clash that gave rise to creation. He sees the present, the fragile balance of gods and men. And he sees the future, a shadow of fire and ruin, the twilight that will one day consume even the mightiest of beings. When he lifts his head from the well, Odin staggers. The world is different now. Every leaf, every gust of wind, every ripple on water, carries meaning he had never noticed before. Mimir watches him silently. "You see now," he says. "But remember, knowledge is both gift and burden. The more you know, the heavier your fate becomes." Odin nods. He understands. His missing eye aches, but in its place burns a deeper vision, a sight that peers beyond appearances, a gaze that pierces into the truth of things. Odin returns to Asgard, but he is not the same. His companions see the empty socket, but they do not see what he has gained. They cheer his return, they pour him mead, they sing songs of his courage. But Odin sits in silence, his thoughts wandering far from the firelit hall. He sees what they cannot see. He feels the weight of what they cannot feel. And he knows that his quest has only begun. Wisdom is not a single cup to be drained. It is an endless ocean. The more one drinks, the more one thirsts. And so Odin's restless spirit stirs once more. He has drunk from Mimir's well, But there are other secrets waiting in the dark places of the world. Secrets of runes, of death and rebirth, of the very fabric of magic itself. You will seek them all. For Odin is not content to rule with power alone. He will rule with knowledge, with foresight, with the wisdom that no sword can pierce, and no storm can sweep away. And so begins the next chapter of his quest. A chapter that will demand even greater sacrifices. A chapter that will test not only his body but his very soul. The halls of Asgard are filled with laughter, but Odin's heart is quiet. The golden mead flows, the fires roar, warriors boast of battles won, and yet the All-Father, for he is already beginning to earn that name, sits apart. His single eye gazes into the distance, toward horizons no one else can see. The wisdom of Mimir's well burns within him, but it is not enough. The visions it gave him were fragments, glimpses of truths, too vast to grasp in their entirety. He longs for more. He longs to not only see the patterns of fate, but to hold them in his hands, to weave them, to command them. And so he turns again to Yggdrasil, the great world tree, the silent witness of eternity. There are whispers that among the branches of Yggdrasil, in its marrow and sap, lie the runes, ancient symbols older than gods, older than giants, perhaps even older than creation itself. The runes are not mere marks. They are forces, keys to the hidden mechanisms of the universe. To know them is to know power. To wield them is to bend destiny itself. But the runes do not give themselves freely. They are secrets, locked away in the bones of the world, and only through sacrifice may they be revealed. Odin feels their call in the silence of night. He dreams of lines carved into stone, of symbols glowing faintly in darkness, of whispers shaping the wind. Each morning he wakes restless, his heart pounding with desire, and so he resolves, he will claim them. On a windswept day, Odin walks alone to the roots of Yggdrasil. The sky above is pale, the air sharp as ice, and the branches of the great tree sway like the arms of giants. He finds a high place, a branch strong enough to bear him, and there he makes his vow. I will not eat, I will not drink, I will not descend from this place, until the runes reveal themselves to me. I will give myself to Yggdrasil. I will give myself to wisdom. Then he takes a spear, his own weapon, and thrusts it into his side. Blood flows, warm and steady, dripping onto the bark of the tree. He binds himself with rope, and hangs suspended, between life and death, between earth and sky, between breath and silence. For 9 nights he hangs there, 9 nights of hunger, 9 nights of thirst, 9 nights of agony so deep, that even gods shudder to imagine it. But Odin does not cry out. He does not beg. He endures. He endures because he knows that knowledge never comes cheaply. It must be bought with suffering, with loss, with the courage to give everything, and expect nothing. On the 9th night, his body weak, his soul frayed like a thread about to break, the vision comes. The darkness around him shifts. The branches of Yggdrasil become lines of fire, glowing, intersecting, forming patterns that pulse with ancient rhythm. The runes appear. They rise from the depths of being, etched in light upon the void. Fehu Eurus Thuruses. Each one a symbol, each one a power. They do not speak in words, but in truths too vast for language. Odin reaches out with trembling hands, and in that moment, the runes reveal themselves. They flow into him, into his blood, into his breath. They carve themselves into the marrow of his bones, and his single eye burns with their brilliance. With a final gasp, Odin understands. He does not merely see the runes. He knows them. Their essence is his essence. Their song is his song. The sacrifice is complete. When Odin awakens, he lies upon the roots of Yggdrasil, the rope broken, the spear fallen aside. His body is frail, but his spirit is vast. He whispers softly, "I have learned. I have seen. The runes are mine." From that day forward, Odin carries the runes as both gift and weapon. He carves them into wood and stone. He traces them into the air with his hands. He whispers them over wounds to heal, over weapons to strengthen, over minds to guide. The gods look upon him with awe. They see not just a warrior, not just a leader, but a being transformed, a god who has embraced pain to grasp truth. The runes become his companions. They are woven into every act of his rule. They give him foresight. They give him cunning. They give him mastery over forces that even the mightiest fear. But knowledge is never light. The runes whisper not only power, but warnings. They show Odin glimpses of battles yet to come, of betrayals yet to unfold, of a twilight that will one day sweep even the gods into shadow. At feast he smiles, but his smile hides the weight of what he knows. He speaks gently, but his words are shaped by the burden of foresight. Every laugh in Asgard, every song, every clash of cups in celebration, all of it is tinged for Odin with the knowledge that nothing lasts forever. Yet he does not despair. The runes have given him more than visions of endings. They have given him the strength to endure those endings. They have given him the wisdom to prepare, to guide, to ensure that even when twilight comes, some spark will endure. And so Odin accepts both gift and burden. For he knows that this is the path he chose, the path of sacrifice, the path of the seeker who became the All-Father. Odin rises from the roots of Yggdrasil. His body is marked by sacrifice, his spirit carved by runes, his very breath humming with secrets. No longer is he only a wanderer or seeker. Now he is something more. A bridge between worlds, a bearer of mysteries, a god who has bent suffering into wisdom. Yet the runes do not lie still within him. They move. They sing. They call to be spoken, carved, and woven into reality. And so Odin begins to use them. In the golden halls of Asgard, warriors fall to wounds. Spears pierce flesh. Swords cut deep. And sometimes even divine bodies tremble on the edge of death. Before they would suffer for days, waiting for time to mend what steel had broken. But now Odin bends over them, his one-eyed gaze burning with calm resolve. He carves runes into wooden staves, presses them gently to wounds, and whispers their ancient sounds. The wounds knit, the bleeding slows. Strength returns to limbs thought lost. The gods watch in awe. They see that Odin carries something greater than brute force. He carries the power to restore, to turn back pain, to cradle life in the palm of his hand. And the warriors who once saw him only as a leader, now bow to him as healer. But healing is only one side of the rune's gift. On the field of war, when giants storm the edges of Asgard, when fire from Muspelheim licks the horizon, Odin stands tall. He lifts his spear Gungnir, a weapon forged by dwarves, already strong, already unerring. But now, with the runes traced upon it, it becomes something greater. Odin whispers words no one else dares to speak. The runes flare like sparks along the shaft. When he casts the spear, it does not simply fly. It chooses. It seeks its mark, as though guided by fate itself. And no shield, no armor, no trick of speed can turn it aside. The giants roar in terror. They see not just a warrior, but a force bound to destiny. Every strike of Gungnir is not merely a blow, but a statement. The runes have spoken, and fate obeys. There are times when strength is not enough. Times when even the bravest warriors falter. When enemies rise not with swords, but with cunning and deceit. It is then that Odin uses the runes of binding. He carves them into stone, into branches, into the very air with his finger. They shimmer, invisible to most, but undeniable in their effect. A liar cannot speak falsehood beneath them. A traitor cannot act against them. A foe cannot move forward when the runes have declared them still. The gods whisper of these powers in hushed tones. They fear them, even as they revere them. For what warrior can fight against destiny itself? What trickster can weave lies, when the symbols of truth glow all around them? Odin uses these powers sparingly, never for vanity, never for petty gain. But when the safety of the realms demands it, he does not hesitate. And then there are the songs. For the runes are not only carved, they are sung. Each symbol carries a note, a vibration older than the world itself. At night, beneath the stars, Odin lifts his voice in quiet song. The melodies ripple across Yggdrasil, carrying whispers to realms unseen. Mortals in Midgard dream of his voice. They wake with visions, with courage they did not have before, with wisdom that seems to come from nowhere. The elves of Alfheim pause in their dances, listening to the distant hum. The dwarves in their forges lift their hammers in rhythm, unknowingly keeping time with Odin's song. Even the giants, who hate him, feel a shiver in their bones, as if the runes are reminding them that even their might is not beyond fate's hand. But each use of the runes comes with weight. Every time Odin heals, he feels the ache of wounds that are not his own. Every time he bends battle, he senses the sorrow of lives ended too soon. Every time he binds with truth, he hears the cries of those trapped by their own treachery. And every song carries echoes of an ending, a distant twilight that grows nearer with each passing day. The wisdom of the runes is no gentle companion. It is sharp. It is relentless. It demands that Odin see what others refuse to see. And he accepts this, because to lead without wisdom is to lead blindly. And Odin will never allow himself to be blind again. One night, as Odin sings softly beneath the branches of Yggdrasil, a shadow moves. It is not giant nor elf, not god nor dwarf. It is something older, something vast, a whisper made flesh. The shadow speaks without words, its voice a tremor in the air. You have taken the runes. You have carved them into your soul. But remember, they are not yours alone. They belong to the cosmos, to the weave of destiny. You are their keeper, not their master. Odin bows his head. He knows this is truth. He may wield the runes, but he does not own them. They flow through him as rivers flow through valleys, and he is but the ground that shapes their course. Still he is content, for to shape even a river is power enough. And so Odin continues. He heals, he guides, he binds, he sings. The runes live within him, and through him they ripple into every corner of the 9 realms. But even now, his hunger is not satisfied, for Odin knows there are still deeper mysteries, Still greater sacrifice is waiting in the shadows. The path of wisdom has no end, only steps further into the unknown. The runes whisper. They whisper in every gust of wind, in the cracking of fire, in the gentle rhythm of waves against a shore. Odin hears them all. But he knows the runes are not the end. They are the beginning. They are keys. And every key opens a door. Some doors lead to healing. Some to victory. Some to wisdom that guides. Yet others lead deeper. Into shadows. Into the silence of death itself. Odin feels that pull. He cannot look away. If the runes reveal life, then somewhere they must also reveal the mysteries of death. And if he is to truly be the All-Father, if he is to prepare for the fate of gods and men, he must know what lies beyond. One mist-draped morning, Odin leaves Asgard in silence. No feast, no farewell. Only his ravens follow him, circling in slow, patient arcs above. The road is long. Through Midgard's forests, where mortals whisper prayers to him as they light fires against the dark. Through the frost-laden lands of Jotunheim, where giants watch him with wary eyes but do not strike, for they sense the runes woven into his very skin. At last he reaches the borders of Hel, the realm of the dead. Here Yggdrasil's roots twist thick and black, their bark soaked with ages of sorrow. The air is heavy, filled with the stillness of countless souls. There is no laughter here, no song, only the hush of eternity. Most gods would turn away, but Odin steps forward. At the threshold stands a guardian. Her name is Modgud, a woman tall as a tower, her eyes pale and endless, her spear shimmering faintly with death's cold light. "Who comes?" she asks, though she already knows. Her voice echoes like hollow stone. "I am Odin," he replies. "I seek knowledge not of the living, but of the dead. Let me pass." Modgud studies him for a long time. Then she nods, her voice a whisper colder than frost. "Few who come here return, but you are not like others. Pass then." But no, the dead do not speak freely. Every answer demands a price. Odin inclines his head. He knows the rule already. For every secret a sacrifice. It is the law of all wisdom. Hell itself stretches out before him. It is not fire, nor torment, nor chaos as mortals sometimes imagine. It is silence. It is endless fields of gray, mist curling like restless dreams. Shadows move, the spirits of men and women long forgotten. They walk slowly, as though time no longer matters. Their faces calm but distant, their voices little more than sighs of wind. And upon a great throne of bone and shadow sits Hel herself, the daughter of Loki, half her face fair, half dark as a corpse. Her gaze meets Odin's. There is no malice in it, but neither is there warmth, only inevitability. "You seek what mortals fear most," she says softly. "You seek the secrets of death." Odin bows. "Yes. Not to cheat it, not to flee from it, but to understand it. For all paths lead here, even for gods, and I would know what awaits." Hel gestures, and the shades gather. Kings who once ruled, warriors who once fought, mothers, children, wanderers, all surround Odin, their whispers blending into a song without melody. He listens. They speak not of pain, but of release, not of terror, but of silence. Death, they tell him, is not an end but a passage, a crossing from one hall to another, from one dream into the next. Yet in their words lies warning. For though death is not the end, There is an end to all things, a twilight even for gods. They whisper of Ragnarok, a doom written into the very threads of the Norns, a fire that no water can quench, a shadow that no sun can pierce. Odin closes his eye, the whispers filling him like icy wind. He has sought knowledge, and it is given, but it comes heavy, a weight upon his shoulders greater than before. At last Hel herself speaks. You have learned much, but knowledge here is never free. You must pay your price. Odin nods. He expected no less. What must I give? Hel rises from her throne. Her form towers over him, her dark side casting shadows deeper than night, her fair side glowing faintly like moonlight. You must give not of flesh this time, but of hope, a fragment of joy, a spark of peace. You must lay it aside, and never hold it again. For one who knows death so deeply, cannot carry joy as others do. Odin breathes slowly. The thought is sharp, cruel even, but he does not flinch. I accept. And in that moment, something within him dims. A light once warm fades into cold. He will laugh again. He will smile again, but never with the unshadowed joy of one ignorant of endings. Every happiness he feels will carry the echo of sorrow, the whisper that all things pass. When Odin leaves the realm of the dead, his step is slower. The mist clings to him. The whispers follow him. He has gained what he sought, but the price clings like frost to his heart. Back in Asgard, the gods cheer his return. They see his spear, his cloak, his steady presence, and they think him unchanged. But he knows better. He knows that within him now dwells the silence of Hel, the inevitability of death, and the certainty of Ragnarok. And so he watches, always watches. Every feast is sweet, but he tastes the bitterness beneath. Every song is bright, but he hears the silence that follows. Every battle is glorious, but he knows the end that waits even for glory. This is the wisdom of Odin, not only to see, but to carry what he sees, to bear the burden of truths too heavy for others, to sacrifice joy so that others may keep it, ignorant and free. The halls of Asgard glow with golden light. Great fires burn within vast hearths, and the sound of feasting echoes across polished stone. Warriors laugh, shields ring. Songs rise toward the vaulted ceilings. It is a scene of joy, of triumph, of life lived in its fullest strength. But at the head of the hall, on the high throne carved with the marks of ages, sits Odin. He watches, he listens, he smiles, yes, but his smile is shaped by sacrifice. For the throne he holds is not won by might alone. It is carved from hunger, from wounds, from the long nights hanging on Yggdrasil, from the silence of Hel. It is a throne of burden. It is a throne of sight. From his throne, Odin's single eye gleams. It does not see as other eyes see. It pierces beyond stone, beyond laughter, beyond the surface of things. When he looks upon a warrior, he sees not only their face, but the path their thread will take in the loom of the Norns. He sees their victories, their betrayals, their final fall. When he gazes at a feast, he sees not only the present joy, but the shadow of silence that will follow, the way fires burn to ash, the way songs fade into echoes. And when he looks at his people, his gods, his kin, he sees not only what they are, but what they will become, and what they will lose. This vision is his gift. It is also his wound. Odin gathers the gods into council. At his side sit Frigg his queen, wise and soft-spoken, her foresight rivaling even his own. There is Thor, broad-shouldered and fierce, his laughter booming like thunder, his temper quick as lightning. There is Balder, radiant, gentle, the shining hope of Asgard. There is Tyr, one-handed yet unbowed, the very spirit of courage. They look to Odin, not only for command but for clarity. He speaks slowly, his voice low and steady, carrying the weight of knowledge none of them share. The 9 realms stir, he tells them. Giants whisper in the shadows of Jotunheim. The dwarves burrow deeper into their forges. Even men in Midgard grow restless, building kingdoms that rise like flame. The gods murmur. Thor is eager for battle. Tyr speaks of honor. Balder calls for peace. But Odin lifts his hand, and silence falls. Odin gathers the gods into council. At his side sit Frigg his queen, wise and soft-spoken, her foresight rivaling even his own. There is Thor, broad-shouldered and fierce, his laughter booming like thunder, his temper quick as lightning. There is Balder, radiant, gentle, the shining hope of Asgard. There is Tyr, one-handed yet unbowed, the very spirit of courage. They look to Odin, not only for command but for clarity. He speaks slowly, his voice low and steady, carrying the weight of knowledge none of them share. The 9 realms stir, he tells them. Giants whisper in the shadows of Jotunheim. The dwarves burrow deeper into their forges. Even men in Midgard grow restless, building kingdoms that rise like flame. The gods murmur. Thor is eager for battle. Tyr speaks of honor. Balder calls for peace. But Odin lifts his hand, and silence falls. We cannot act in blindness, he says. We must watch. We must prepare. We must weave our strength carefully, for the day will come when all will be tested. And when that day arrives, we must be ready. In the highest tower of Asgard sits Hlidskjalf, the throne of vision. From here, Odin may see across all the realms. No secret is hidden from him. No corner of the cosmos beyond his sight. He sits there often, his ravens perched at his shoulders. Hugin thought, Munin memory. Each morning they fly across the 9 realms. Each evening they return, whispering into his ear all that they have seen. Mortals at war, giants gathering, elves weaving magic, dwarves forging wonders. Odin knows it all. But Hlidskjalf is not only a gift, it is also a mirror of his burden. For every sight he beholds reminds him of the web of fate. Every joy he sees is a joy that will fade. Every child born is a warrior who will one day fall. Every new dawn is a step closer to the twilight he cannot forget. And so Odin sits, day after day, his eyes sweeping across the realms, not to seek comfort, but to prepare. Leadership, Odin knows, is not the freedom to act as one pleases. It is the duty to carry what others cannot. It is the strength to bear the truth alone. He does not tell the gods everything he sees. He does not whisper the full shadow of Ragnarok into their ears. To Thor he gives strength. To Balder he gives hope. To Tyr he gives courage. To Frigg he gives partnership. He gives each what they need, shielding them from the weight that would crush them. This is the paradox of the All-Father. He bears wisdom not for himself, but for others. He suffers not to ease his own path, but to clear theirs. He sacrifices not for glory, but for the fragile light of those who depend upon him. And though he is worshipped as king, He feels more often like a guardian, standing forever at the edge of storm, taking the brunt of winds, so that others may know peace. At night, when the feasts have ended, when Asgard lies quiet beneath the stars, Odin walks alone. His cloak drags softly against stone, his steps echo in empty halls. He remembers the voices of hell. He remembers the weight of Mimir's waters. He remembers the burn of runes carved into his soul. And he remembers the prophecy, Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, the fire that will sweep across Asgard, the wolf that will devour the sun, the serpent that will rise from the sea. He sees it when he closes his eye. He hears it when he listens to silence. Follows him always, but he does not falter. He does not allow fear to rule him. Instead, he lets it shape him, temper him, like a blade forged in the hottest flame. If Ragnarok is to come, then he will meet it with wisdom, with strength, with every secret he has torn from the cosmos. This is the oath he whispers to himself each night. I will not flee. I will not yield. If doom comes, it will find me standing. And through me, through sacrifice, something will endure. The golden halls of Asgard were not meant only for joy. They were also a fortress. Every stone laid, every wall raised, every tower reaching toward the heavens, was more than a marvel of beauty. It was a shield. Odin knew this better than any. While others drank and laughed, while warriors sharpened axes for battles to come, he thought not of days but of ages. He thought not of victory in a single battle, but of survival in the storm at the world's end. The gods were mighty, yes, but might alone was never enough. Odin walked among his sons and daughters, teaching each according to their nature. To Thor he gave the gift of patience. The great hammer Mjolnir was already his strength, but strength without wisdom is like lightning without a storm. So Odin tempered him. He sent him to face foes he could not strike down, to solve riddles he could not smash. Through frustration came growth. To Balder, shining and beloved, Odin gave the burden of gentleness. He warned him that love is not only joy, it is a chain of sorrow. For all things loved are doomed to fade. Balder listened, his smile unbroken, his heart still radiant. And Odin knew this radiance would be both a gift and a curse. To Tyr, already brave, Odin gave tests of sacrifice. Honor was not measured by what one gained, but by what one was willing to lose. And so Tyr learned, until the day would come when his hand itself would be laid upon the altar of loyalty. Even to Loki, clever and restless, Odin gave challenges. He did not blind himself to Loki's mischief. He saw both the flame of wit and the shadow of betrayal. But Odin also saw the necessity of chaos, for without fire, the cold would reign forever. So he kept Loki close, not as a son without fault, but as a storm to be guided rather than denied. Thus Odin shaped them all, not only for their lives, but for the roles they would play in the tapestry of fate. It was not only the gods who felt Odin's gaze. From Hlidskjalf, he looked down upon Midgard. Men and women toiled, their lives short and filled with struggle. Their fires flickered bravely against the night, but they knew little of what lay beyond. Some gods cared little for mortals, dismissing them as fleeting sparks. But Odin saw more. He saw that even sparks, when gathered, can become flame. And so he gave to humankind the gift of runes, the same knowledge he had torn from Yggdrasil. He whispered secrets into the minds of seers. He guided the hands of carvers upon stone. He gave them wisdom to endure, courage to resist, dreams to strive beyond their limits. For Odin knew, mortals would one day fight beside the gods. At the edge of Ragnarok, their spears, their courage, their songs, all would matter. And in this giving, Odin saw a reflection of himself. He too was fleeting, for even gods are not eternal. And so he poured himself into men, ensuring that if he fell, some fragment of his vision would endure. Night after night, Odin sought out the Norns. By the roots of Yggdrasil they sat, weaving destiny from threads of past, present, future. The eldest, Ord, spoke of what had been. The middle, Verdandi, spoke of what was. The youngest, Skuld, spoke of what was yet to come. Odin listened, never interrupting, his one eye gleaming in torchlight. He asked not for comfort, but for truth. The Norns showed him glimpses. A wolf with jaws vast enough to swallow the sun, a serpent coiled around the earth, fire raining from Muspelheim, the sky breaking apart, and always, the image of his children, gods he had raised, sons he had guided, daughters he had cherished, falling, one by one, into the long night. Odin did not weep, but the roots of Yggdrasil trembled. At the silence of his grief, he rose, bowed his head, and whispered, "Then let me spend every breath preparing them. If doom must come, it will not find us unready." It was in these days that Odin ordered the raising of Valhalla, not merely a hall, but a fortress of souls. Its roof was thatched with golden shields, its rafters spears, its benches endless. Here the chosen dead, the Einherjar, would feast by night, and train by day, forever sharpening their strength. For the last battle, every fallen warrior, every mortal who met death with courage, was gathered by the Valkyries, the shining maidens who rode between realms. They carried the slain to Odin's hall, where meat never ended, and meat flowed without cease. At first some gods questioned, why give such honor to mortals? Why fill Asgard's halls with men who would one day die again? But Odin knew. He saw in them a fire unlike any other. They knew their lives were short, and yet they still chose courage. And that courage, he believed, would matter more than gold, more than magic, more even than godhood. So Valhalla rose, and with it Odin's vision of a shield, made not of stone, but of spirit. Not all burdens were carried alone. Beside Odin sat Frigg, his queen, whose wisdom was woven in silence. She saw what he did not in the far reaches of fate, but in the small heartbeats of the present. Where Odin's eye gazed outward, hers gazed inward. She saw the fears of children, the doubts of warriors, the quiet grief of the gods. At night, when Odin returned heavy with visions, Frigg laid her hand upon his brow. She spoke no prophecy, no counsel, only stillness. It was enough. For even the All-Father needed rest. Even the King of Gods needed to remember that he was not only wisdom and burden, but also husband, also father, also flesh. And in those moments, Odin almost believed that the shadow of Ragnarok might yet be held at bay. Still the throne of Hlidskjalf awaited. Still Hugin and Munin flew. Still the Norns wove. And Odin never ceased his watching. The All-Father bore his crown not as glory, but as a chain. Every vision he gathered was a stone added to the weight. Every secret he learned was another thread tying him to destiny. But he did not falter. He sat taller upon his throne, his voice steady in council, his gaze unbroken in battle. For this was Odin's vow, to carry what none else could, to suffer so that others might hope, to bear the burden of foresight, until the final twilight. And though the gods did not always understand, though mortals did not always know his name, the very fabric of the 9 realms rested on the silent strength of the one-eyed king. The All-Father's vigil was unending, yet even Odin in his boundless wisdom knew that no kingdom could stand alone. The 9 realms were bound together, like branches of Yggdrasil, each root feeding the next, each leaf casting shade upon its neighbors. And so Odin left his high throne, and with cloak of deep blue upon his shoulders, he set forth to wander once more. For in wandering he found truth, and in truth he found strength. Beyond Asgard's shining walls lay Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods. They were not like the Aesir, where the Aesir prized war, might, and dominion. The Vanir cherished growth, fertility, and peace. The 2 tribes had once been enemies, clashing in a war that split the heavens with fire. But Odin, ever wise, had forged peace through exchange. Njord, Freyr, and Freya, 3 of the Vanir's greatest, had come to dwell in Asgard as hostages, though soon they were kin. For bonds of necessity became bonds of respect. Now Odin traveled to Vanaheim, not as conqueror, but as brother. The fields there rolled in endless green. The air was sweet with harvest, the rivers swelling with silver fish. Where Asgard rang with steel, Vanaheim sang with life. The Vanir welcomed him with cautious honor. They knew Odin's mind was heavy with foresight, and foresight rarely came without shadow. In council he spoke with Njord, lord of the seas and winds. He spoke with Freyr, who brought peace and harvest to men, and with Freya, mistress of seer magic, whose beauty was rivaled only by her power. Brothers and sisters, Odin said, his voice rolling like distant thunder, the storm that I have seen will not spare your fields, nor our halls, nor the mountains that divide us. If the wolf Fenrir breaks free, if the serpent Jormungandr rises, if Muspelheim pours fire upon the skies, then no boundary shall stand between us. The Vanir murmured, but Freya raised her hand. Her eyes gleamed, seeing more than others dared. Odin speaks truth, she said, for fate does not weave separate threads, but one cloth. If the cloth burns, all within it will turn to ash. And so pacts were renewed. The Vanir swore their strength, their fields, their magic, and Odin swore Asgard's steel in return. Thus 2 peoples, once enemies, became shield brothers before the shadow of doom. From Vanaheim Odin's path wound downward, into the deep caverns of Nidavellir, home of the dwarves. There the air was thick with smoke and iron. Hammers rang without pause, chiseling sparks into the eternal dark. Dwarves, bent and strong, toiled endlessly at their forges, creating treasures unmatched by any hand. Odin strode through their halls, his one eye glimmering in torchlight. The dwarves watched him warily, for though they respected the gods, they trusted only the weight of metal. At their council fire Odin spoke. Children of stone and flame, your forges burn brighter than any star. Your hands have shaped gifts beyond reckoning. But the day is coming, when even your caverns will quake, when giants will tread mountains into dust. I ask not for gifts of vanity, but for weapons that will stand. When the world itself crumbles, The dwarves whispered among themselves. They remembered the weapons already given. Mjolnir, hammer of Thor. Gungnir, spear of Odin himself. Draupnir, the golden ring that birthed more of its kind. But Odin pressed further. He asked not only for tools, but for chains strong enough to bind fate itself. Thus the dwarves forged Gleipnir, the silken cord of impossible strength, woven from the sound of a cat's footsteps, the beard of a woman, the breath of fish, and other things unseen by mortal eyes. With it, Odin knew Fenrir might be held, if only for a time, and so he left Nidavellir, with treasures hidden in his cloak, each one a shard of hope, against the endless night. From shadowed halls he rose again, and his feet carried him to Alfheim, realm of the light elves. There the air shimmered with radiance. Forests glowed as though kissed by dawn, and the very stones seemed alive with light. The elves greeted Odin not as a king, but as a guest of equal measure. Their queen, fair and wise, sat upon a throne of crystal leaves. She listened as Odin spoke of war to come, of wolves and fire, of chains breaking and stars falling. The elves were creatures of beauty, yet they were not blind to darkness. They knew that light shines brightest when night gathers deepest. So they offered what they could: songs of power, charms of healing, and the promise that their arrows would fly beside Asur's spears in the final war. And Odin, bowing low, accepted their vow. But not all journeys were met with welcome. For Odin, wise though he was, knew that even enemies must be measured, and sometimes bargained with. Thus he turned his path toward Jotunheim, the land of giants. The mountains there rose like jagged teeth. The winds howled with voices older than men. Frost lay upon every stone, as though the land itself refused warmth. The giants looked upon Odin with scorn. They remembered his slaying of Ymir, the great ancestor whose body had become the world itself. "Why come here, All-Father?" they rumbled, their voices like avalanches. "You who built your hall upon our father's bones?" Odin stood unshaken. "I come not to beg, but to know. For in knowing, there is strength, and in strength, there is survival." Some giants mocked him, but others listened. For even among frost and rage, wisdom has its place. It was there in icy caverns that Odin learned secrets the giants themselves scarcely understood: the movements of stars, the deep songs of stone, the tides that pulled even gods. He carried these secrets back with him, not as treasures, but as burdens. For knowledge is weight, and Odin bore it without falter. When Odin returned to Asgard, his cloak was heavy, his hands lined with gifts, his heart filled with visions. He had bound allies, secured weapons, and gathered truths from every corner of the 9 realms. The gods saw his labors and marveled at his endurance. But Odin did not boast. He sat once more upon Hlidskjalf, his one eye fixed upon horizons unseen, and he whispered only, "One day closer, one day stronger." And so Asgard waited. Feasts roared, children laughed, wars flared and faded. But above it all, the All-Father's burden never lifted. The golden halls of Asgard glowed beneath starlight. The feast fires burned. The laughter of warriors echoed. The clatter of mead cups filled the air. But Odin sat apart. Upon Hlidskjalf, the high seat of sight. He gazed not at feasts, but at the weaving of fate. His journeys had shown him much. The Vanir had pledged their harvests. The dwarves had forged chains of wonder. The elves had sung their light into his keeping. Even the giants had whispered secrets of stone and star. And yet, for all that he had gathered, one truth gnawed at him still. The end would come. Ragnarok would not be denied. So Odin called his kin. Thor, his thunder-strong son, his hammer gleaming with stormlight. Balder, fair and shining, whose smile brought peace to all who saw it. Frigg, his queen, whose wisdom was as deep as his own foresight. Heimdall, guardian of the Bifrost, whose ears could hear grass grow, whose eyes could see to the edge of the worlds. And many more, the family of gods, each with their gifts, each with their flaws. They gathered in Gladsheim, the great hall where pillars touched the sky. The torches burned bright, their smoke curling like whispers of destiny. Odin rose. His cloak fell heavy from his shoulders. His spear Gungnir gleamed with carved runes. "My kin," he began, his voice low, steady, like thunder murmuring on the horizon. "We live in days of peace. Our halls are strong, our enemies held at bay. But I tell you now, the shadow grows. The wolf strains at his chains. The serpent coils beneath the sea. The fire giants wait at the edge of Muspelheim. And when they come, they will not come singly. They will come as one storm, and it will fall upon us all." The hall fell silent. Thor gripped Mjolnir, knuckles white with fury. "Let them come," he roared. "I will crush them as I have crushed every foe before." But Odin lifted his hand. "Strength will not be enough, my son. This war will not be like others. It will not end with feasts, nor with songs of victory. It will end in fire, and in endings. But though the end is written, we may yet guide how it is told." Frigg stepped forward, her face calm though her heart trembled. "Then what must we do, All-Father?" Odin's gaze swept them all. "We prepare, not for victory, but for legacy. For though the wolf may devour me, though the serpent may coil the seas, though fire may burn the skies, what we plant now will bloom in worlds yet to come." Odin left Gladsheim that night, and walked among the mortals of Midgard. They were small, fragile as leaves upon the wind, yet within them burned a stubborn flame. He taught them runes, not all, but enough. Enough to heal, to bind, to guide. Enough to whisper courage into their hearts. When darkness pressed too near, he showed them how to raise stones, to mark the graves of their kin, so memory would endure. He gave them songs that would outlast even Asgard's fall, carried on lips long after the gods were dust. The mortals bowed in awe, but Odin looked upon them not as worshippers, but as seeds, for he knew, from these seeds, a new world might yet grow. At night, sleep rarely touched him. When it did, dreams came not as rest, but as prophecy. He dreamed of Fenrir's jaws closing around him. He dreamed of Jormungandr rising from the sea, its venom choking the skies. He dreamed of fire sweeping across Asgard's halls, the Bifrost shattering, the gods falling one by one. But in the darkest dreams, he also saw light, children walking in green fields, rivers flowing clear and sweet, mortals whispering names of gods they no longer remembered, yet honoring them in silence, in fire, in song. Odin would wake with tears upon his face, not of sorrow, but of weight. For even the end, when seen with a seer's eye, can hold hope. One evening, as Odin sat beneath Yggdrasil, the Norns came, the three weavers of fate, older than gods, older than time. They looked upon him with eyes like endless wells. Wise one, they said, you have drunk deep of Mimir's well. You have hung upon the tree. You have wandered the realms, and carved runes upon your soul. But know this, no wisdom, no weapon, no pact will save you from what is written. Odin bowed his head. I know. The wolf waits, and I wait for him. The Norns whispered together, their voices like wind in dead leaves. Then they spoke. But remember, All-Father, death is not defeat. What you plant will rise again. The roots drink deep. The tree endures. And with that they vanished, leaving only silence, and the steady breath of Yggdrasil above. From that night onward, Odin watched not only as king, but as guardian of memory. He told stories to the young gods, teaching them not only strength, but wisdom. He carved runes upon the very stones of Asgard, so their echoes would linger, even when the halls were ash. He stood upon Hlidskjalf each dawn, his one eye gazing over the 9 realms, and each dusk he whispered a single vow. When the end comes, I will not flee, I will stand, and though I fall, the song will not end. As years rolled into centuries, peace held. Asgard thrived. Midgard grew. The realms spun in harmony. But Odin's heart was never light, for he had seen the storm. He had heard the thunder of fire and foam, and he knew peace was but the breath before the shout. Still he smiled when he could. He drank with Thor, laughed with Balder, walked with Frigg in gardens of gold. For even all fathers know that joy, however brief, is worth the keeping. And so Odin bore his burden, king of Asgard, wanderer of worlds, seeker of wisdom, bearer of fate. He had gathered knowledge, forged pacts, bound enemies, and taught mortals. And though he knew the end was certain, he also knew this: the story would not end in silence. It would end in thunder, in fire, in sacrifice, and in the seeds of a new dawn. Beneath the branches of Yggdrasil, where roots drink from wells deeper than memory, the air grew heavy. The birds did not sing. The wind whispered only silence. And Odin, seated upon Hlidskjalf, felt the weight of stillness. It was not peace. It was warning. It began with the sun, once radiant, its light golden and strong. It now seemed pale at dawn, lingering low upon the horizon. The people of Midgard whispered that the skies were dimming. The harvest was weaker, the nights longer. In Asgard the gods argued. Thor roared that it was nothing, that the sun still rose, that the storm still broke upon his hammer. But Odin saw deeper. He knew the wolves, Skoll and Hati, had begun their chase anew. Each day they drew nearer to devouring the sun and moon. The second sign came from Jotunheim. Giants stirred in their frozen halls, their eyes burning with hunger. Old grudges, once quiet, blazed with fresh fury. They sharpened axes of ice, forged spears taller than pine trees, and waited for the call to war. The third sign was heard in Midgard. Brothers turned against brothers. Blood was spilled not for survival, but for greed. Oaths were broken, families shattered. The world of men trembled, not from storms, but from their own hands. And Odin knew. The weaving of fate had tightened. The prophecies he had sought, the visions he had seen, were no longer distant. They were steps upon the path, already walked. To be certain, Odin sought the seers. Far in Midgard, old women sat beside fires, their eyes clouded white, their voices carrying words not their own. He wandered to them in the guise of a traveler, cloak drawn low, staff in hand. They looked upon him, and without hesitation, they spoke. The wolf waits, the serpent coils, the fire burns unseen, and you one-eyed wanderer, you cannot turn aside what is already woven. Odin pressed his questions. How soon? What path remains? What hope endures? But the seers shook their heads. There is no soon, only now. There is no path, only the one you already walk. Hope is not for you, All-Father. Hope is for those who will come after. And they turned away, their voices fading back into the crackle of flame. Odin walked on, his staff heavy, his heart heavier still. At last he returned to the well of Mimir, where once he had given his eye. The waters shimmered with secrets, and Mimir, wise keeper of memory, rose to meet him. You return, Mimir said, his voice echoing like water and stone. Not for curiosity this time, but for fear. Odin did not deny it. I have seen signs. I have heard seers. Tell me, keeper, is there truly no way to turn the tide? Mimir's face was sorrow. You ask what you already know. The wolf will break free. The serpent will rise. The fire will burn. You will fall, Odin, not for lack of wisdom, not for lack of might, but because even gods are threads in the loom of fate. Odin bowed his head. I know, but tell me this, will there be life after? Will the roots endure, even if the branches burn? Mimir's eyes glowed faintly. Yes, a new dawn will come. From ashes children will rise. From ruin green will grow. The tree does not end with one season. And though sorrow weighed him, Odin felt a spark of peace. His death, his fall, would not be the end of all. When Odin returned to Asgard, he told no one of what he had heard. Thor would rage. Frigg would weep. The young gods would lose their laughter. Instead, Odin kept the burden within. Each smile he shared, each feast he attended, was shadowed by what he alone knew. The All-Father bore his secrets in silence. And in silence, he prepared. Each dawn, Odin sat upon Hlidskjalf. He watched the wolves creep closer to sun and moon. He watched Midgard fracture under its own greed. He watched giants sharpen blades. Watched dwarves whisper of forging weapons. Watched elves sing songs tinged with sorrow. He did not turn away. He did not blink. For he was Odin. And though fate was unyielding, he would meet it with open eye and unbroken will. The golden halls of Asgard gleamed, but beneath their brilliance cracks had begun to form. The feasts were loud, the laughter strong, but the All-Father's one eye saw the shadows that grew at the edges of joy. Thor stormed through the courtyards, his hammer striking against shields in restless rhythm. He longed for battle, for an enemy he could strike, for foes he could crush beneath thunder. But no foe came, only whispers of doom, and whispers Thor could not fight. Father, he said, standing before Odin's throne, why do we sit idle? The giants gather, the wolf grows, the serpent coils beneath the waves. Let me march upon them now. Let me end this before it begins. Odin regarded him quietly. His son's fire was both blessing and curse. Thor, my son, Odin said softly, you cannot strike prophecy with a hammer. You cannot silence fate with thunder. Thor's face darkened. He turned, storming from the hall, his footsteps like rolling thunder. And Odin felt the first tear in Asgard's unity. Not all unrest came from fire. Some came in silence. Baldur, the shining god, began to dream. His dreams were heavy, filled with shadows. He spoke of death, of falling into darkness, of a hand reaching out from beneath the earth. Frigg wept to hear her son's fears. She begged Odin to protect him. And Odin, who had sacrificed everything for wisdom, knew these dreams were not illusions. He rode Sleipnir across the 9 realms, seeking answers. He traveled to Hel, the shadowed land of the dead, and there he saw preparations. A hall had been swept, benches laid, cups polished. A seat stood empty, waiting. It was Baldur's seat. Odin returned to Asgard in silence. He told no one of what he had seen. But when he looked upon his son, he smiled through sorrow, knowing joy would soon turn to grief. At the edges of Asgard's halls, another shadow stirred. Loki, once blood brother to Odin, once friend and ally. The trickster grew restless. His eyes gleamed with schemes. His tongue whispered poison. He mocked the gods at their feasts. He twisted truth into jest. He turned laughter into knives. Many ignored him. Some despised him. But Odin, watching from Hlidskjalf, knew that even laughter could topple thrones. He saw Loki's children, Fenrir the wolf bound in Gleipnir, Jormungandr the serpent hidden in seas, Hel the queen of death. They were not mistakes. They were signs. And Loki, though he smiled, was the father of endings. As whispers grew, so did fear. The gods began to doubt one another. Old friendships weakened. Old rivalries sharpened. Some blamed the Vanir, saying their magic clouded Asgard's peace. Some blamed mortals, saying their greed brought rot to the roots of Yggdrasil. Others blamed Loki, whose tongue sowed division wherever it turned. Odin alone carried the truth. Blame mattered little. The storm was already written. And yet, seeing his family fracture, his heart ached with a pain even wisdom could not ease. Night after night, Odin walked alone. He stood upon the walls of Asgard, looking toward Jotunheim's frozen peaks, toward Midgard's fragile fields, toward Muspelheim's distant glow. He listened to the silence of the stars. He whispered to Hugin and Munin, his ravens, asking what they saw. They returned with grim tidings, giants sharpening spears, wolves pacing in hunger, men breaking their oaths. And Odin, though king of gods, felt the loneliness of one who sees the storm, while others dance beneath sunlight. One evening, Frigg came to him. Her eyes shone with sorrow, her hands trembling. Odin, she said, tell me the truth. I see your silence. I see the heaviness in your gaze. You carry something you do not share. Do you see Baldur's death? Do you see the fall of Asgard? Odin turned away. His voice was low, weighed with centuries of burden. Yes, I see it. I have always seen it. But to speak it is to cut the thread shorter. And so I hold it, silent, until silence itself breaks. Frigg wept. And Odin, who had faced giants, who had hung upon Yggdrasil, felt powerless before her tears. Slowly Asgard's joy dimmed. Feasts grew quieter. Laughter turned strained. Eyes darted with suspicion. The golden hall still stood, shining in sunlight. But beneath the surface, the cracks widened. Odin watched it all. He had gathered wisdom. He had forged alliances. He had prepared as no one ever had. And yet, he could not stop the unraveling. The prophecy was not a storm upon the horizon. It was here, creeping, gnawing, woven into every silence, every shadow, every dream. And Odin, All-Father, stood as its witness. Balder was the brightest among the Aesir. His hair gleamed like threads of sunlight. His smile calmed storms, and his voice softened even the fiercest of hearts. Mortals prayed to him for peace. Mothers whispered his name to their children. Warriors lowered their swords when Balder spoke. He was the god of light, of purity, of hope. And in him, all saw the promise that Asgard would never fall. Yet light draws shadow, and in shadow doom hides. Night after night, Balder's sleep grew restless. He dreamed of falling into darkness, of being pierced by unseen hands, of silence swallowing his voice. He awoke trembling, his radiance dimmed. Frigg, his mother, gathered him close. She stroked his hair, whispered soothing words, but she too felt fear in her heart. The gods gathered in the golden hall, and Balder spoke. My dreams show me death. I do not know when or how, but I feel the end creeping near. The hall grew silent. Even Thor, bold in every battle, looked away, unable to meet his brother's gaze. Frigg would not surrender her son. She set forth across the 9 realms. She visited every creature, every plant, every stone. Swear, she begged, swear that you will not harm Balder, my beloved. The beasts bowed their heads. The trees whispered assent. The stones remained still in silence, but their silence was their vow. All things swore, all things promised, and so Frigg returned to Asgard, her heart lighter. Her son was safe. The world itself had sworn it. Only one thing she overlooked, the small, slender sprig of mistletoe, so young and harmless, that she deemed it too small to matter. When the Aesir learned that nothing could harm Balder, they turned fear into joy. They made a game of it. In the courtyard, they threw spears at him. They hurled stones, swung axes, even cast Thor's hammer at his chest. Each weapon turned aside, each blade dulled, each stone bounced harmlessly away. The gods laughed, and Balder laughed with them. It was proof of his purity, his invincibility, his role as the shining heart of Asgard. But at the edge of the circle, in the shadows where laughter did not reach, Loki watched. Loki's heart was not at peace. Once he had shared the gods' laughter. Once he had sat at Odin's side as a brother. But now, his eyes burned with envy, his heart twisted with bitterness. Why should Balder be loved above all? Why should one god shine, while he, Loki, father of wolves and serpents, was cursed with whispers and scorn? He walked quietly to Frigg's hall. Disguised as an old woman, he spoke softly to the goddess. You have made all swear oaths, dear Frigg. Surely nothing can harm your son. Frigg smiled, weary but proud. Yes, all things have sworn, all save for one. A small sprig of mistletoe, so young and harmless, that I did not ask it. What danger could it bring? The old woman nodded, and when she left, her steps were lighter. For Loki had learned the one secret he needed. In a quiet glade, Loki plucked the mistletoe. Though slender and green, he wove it into an arrow, sharp and cruel. He carried it back to Asgard, where the gods still played their game. They laughed, they threw, they rejoiced at Balder's untouchable form. But in the crowd stood Hoder, Balder's blind brother. He listened to the laughter, to the sounds of weapons striking harmlessly, and his heart sank. "I cannot join you," he whispered. "I cannot see to throw. I am left out." Loki's voice slid into his ear like a serpent's hiss. "Take this Hodor. I will guide your hand. Throw it at your brother, and you will share in the joy." Hodor smiled, trusting the voice that spoke. He drew back the arrow, and with Loki's hand guiding his aim, the mistletoe flew. The arrow struck. Balder gasped. His body trembled, and then he fell. The courtyard grew still. The laughter died. Weapons fell from stunned hands. Frigg screamed. Thor roared. Odin's one eye filled with sorrow deeper than words. Balder lay lifeless. The first blood spilled in Asgard since its founding. The shining god, beloved of all, was gone. And Loki, though he hid his smile, knew he had struck the first blow of Ragnarok. The gods wept. The halls of Asgard echoed with mourning. The air grew heavy, the skies dimmed, and even the earth itself shuddered. They carried Balder's body to the sea. There they built the greatest of pyres. Upon his ship Ringhorni, Frigg wept over her son, her tears falling like silver rain. Thor blessed the fire with Mjolnir. The flames rose, licking the sky, as Balder's ship drifted into the horizon. Never had Asgard felt such loss. And Odin, watching the smoke rise, knew the prophecy had taken its first step. But hope remained. Hermod, the swift son of Odin, volunteered to ride to Hel and plead for Balder's return. He mounted Sleipnir, the eight-legged steed, and galloped through shadow and mist, down to the land of the dead. Hel, cold and stern, greeted him in her hall. "If all creatures weep for Balder," she said, "then he shall be released. But if one refuses, he will remain here forever." Hermod returned to Asgard with the bargain. The gods sent messengers across the 9 realms, and all wept. Beasts howled, trees bent, stones shed silent tears, all save one, a giantess, whom many believed was Loki in disguise, refused. "Let Hel keep what she has," she said. And so Balder remained in Hel's halls, forever beyond reach. The gods' grief turned to rage. They seized Loki, bound him with the entrails of his own son, and placed a serpent above him, its venom dripping upon his face. His screams shook the earth, but the damage was done. Balder was gone. Light was gone. And Asgard's unity, once golden and unshakable, was shattered. Odin stood silent, his one eye upon the horizon. He had seen it. He had always seen it. And now, his children bore the weight of his visions. The world had taken its first step toward fire and ruin, and there was no turning back. When Balder fell, the golden thread of Asgard unraveled. No laughter echoed in the halls. No songs rose at the feasts. Only silence, broken by whispers of grief. But grief can become fury, and fury needs a target. The Aesir looked upon Loki, the trickster, the serpent who had guided the blind hand of Hodor. He had stolen light from their world. He had betrayed his kin. Thor's hands trembled around Mjolnir. Odin's eye blazed with sorrow and fire. Frigg, her voice like broken glass, whispered only one word: punishment. Loki fled. Disguises cloaked him. Shadows sheltered him. He crossed rivers, scaled mountains, hid in caverns beneath the earth. He shifted shape, a salmon leaping in the streams, a bird soaring through the clouds, a stone resting by the shore. But nowhere could he escape the will of Asgard. Thor hunted him, his steps like thunder, his eyes sharp as lightning. With a net woven by the gods, they dragged the streams, searched the skies, and scoured the mountains. At last, they caught him. Loki, writhing in salmon skin, slipped through their fingers, until Thor's hand closed around his tail. The god of thunder held him fast, and Loki's laughter turned to screams. Dragged before the council, Loki faced the judgment of the Aesir. "You will not walk free," Odin decreed. "You will not sow chaos again. You will pay, until the world itself ends." And so they carried him deep beneath the earth, to a cavern blacker than night. There they brought his sons. 2 were slain, their entrails twisted into chains, still warm and slick, and with them, they bound Loki to the jagged rocks. Above his head, they placed a serpent, its fangs dripping venom. Drop by drop, the poison fell upon his brow, burning like fire, searing his flesh. Loki writhed. He screamed, his voice echoing through stone and soil, shaking the mountains above. But he was not alone. Sigyn, his faithful wife, stood beside him. Day and night, she held a bowl above his face, catching the venom as it dripped. Her arms trembled, her eyes never closed, her heart never faltered. When the bowl grew full, she carried it away to empty it. And in that brief moment, the venom struck Loki's skin once more. His screams shook the earth, and men on the surface felt them as quakes. The ground trembled, houses shuddered, mountains split. They called it earthquake, but it was only Loki's torment. And so it continued, an eternity of pain, a cycle of poison, of screams, of trembling earth. Above, the halls of the gods grew cold. The hearths of feasts dimmed. The mead cups stood untouched. Odin sat upon his high throne, Bliskjolf, gazing across the 9 realms. His ravens whispered of doom. His wolves rested uneasily at his feet. Thor paced like a caged storm, his hammer restless in his grip. Frigg wept in silence, her heart hollow without Balder. And the others, Tyr, Heimdall, Freya, they too felt it. The shadow had lengthened. The golden age was over. In the distance, the Norns spun their threats, their hands never stopping. They whispered of fire rising, of wolves breaking chains, of seas boiling, and of gods meeting their fates. They whispered of Loki's chains snapping, of venom spilling freely, of his children unleashed. And Odin, though he told no one, knew the truth. This binding was no end. It was only a pause, a silence before the storm. The 9 realms shifted uneasily. In Midgard, men felt the tremors, heard the thunder without storms, saw the sun dim behind strange clouds. In Jotunheim the giants stirred, their hearts hungry for vengeance. In Helheim Balder sat in cold halls, his light still radiant, but trapped beyond reach. Beside him sat Hodr, for he too was slain in guilt and sorrow. And there they waited, brothers in death, a reminder that even the bright can fall. And so Loki lay bound. The venom dripped, the earth quaked, and Sigyn stood tireless, her love unbroken, her heart a shield against despair. Each drop was a drumbeat of destiny, each scream a note in the coming song of ruin. Asgard stood tall above him, its towers still gleaming, its warriors still strong. But beneath its roots, the trickster writhed, the serpent waited, and the end crept closer. For Ragnarok had begun not with fire, not with wolves, but with a single arrow of mistletoe. And from that arrow, the world would burn. The world had grown quiet, too quiet, not with peace, but with the stillness that comes before a storm. In Asgard, the halls of the gods still gleamed, their golden roofs shining in the pale light of the fading sun. But that light seemed dimmer now, as if a veil had been drawn across the heavens. The air itself carried a weight, a heaviness that pressed upon the heart. Every god, every giant, every mortal across the 9 realms could feel it, a tension that could not be named, yet could not be denied. The Norns had whispered of this age, their threads already woven, their runes already carved, and Odin, with his one all-seeing eye, knew that the whispers were true. He had seen the end in visions, felt it in dreams, read it in the trembling branches of Yggdrasil. It would begin slowly, like the first cracks in the ice of a frozen lake. A creak, a shiver, a sound that seemed harmless at first, but which spoke of something vast breaking apart. In Midgard, men began to notice the change first. The seasons faltered, their rhythm broken. The sun shone weakly, its warmth fading. The moon cast strange shadows, lingering too long in the night. Then came the cold. Not a winter like any before, but the Fimbul winter, the great winter. Snow fell endlessly, covering fields, mountains, rivers, even the sea. The winds howled like wolves, piercing flesh and bone. Men huddled in their homes, their fires flickering low, their breath frozen in the air. But the Fimbul winter was more than ice and snow. It was hunger. It was despair. Brothers turned against brothers. Families broke apart. Wars erupted in villages and kingdoms alike. Blood stained the snow red, and the cries of the dying rose into the storm. The old songs had spoken of this. The poets had warned of it. But now it was no longer prophecy. It was the present, and it would last not for a single season, nor for a single year, but for 3 long winters, without the relief of summer between them. Far above, and deep below, Yggdrasil, the great world tree. Its branches stretched across the heavens, its roots sank deep into the realms of ice and fire. Every leaf shivered, every root groaned. From its crown came the cry of the eagle, restless in the storm. From beneath its roots, an Ichijir, the dragon, gnawed and clawed with greater fury, as if it too sensed the weakening of the world. The wells that nourished the tree grew troubled. Mimir's well whispered darker secrets than before, and the well of Ord boiled with visions too grim to speak. Even the Norns themselves, who had always woven in silence, began to murmur more urgently, their voices weaving with the wind. The whole cosmos trembled, as though it were a harp string pulled too tight, ready to snap. In the deepest ocean, beneath waves colder than ice, the great serpent stirred. Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, was so vast that it encircled the world entirely, its tail in its mouth, its coils resting upon the seabed. But now it shifted. The waters boiled. The seas rose. Storms raged across the oceans. Ships splintered. Coasts vanished beneath the waves. Fishermen saw its scales glint in the dark waters, larger than the sails of their ships. Sailors heard its hissing breath, louder than the roar of storms. The serpent's eyes opened, and the depths shuddered. It spat venom, black and burning, poisoning rivers and seas alike. The world reeled. The balance was breaking, and Jormungandr waited, for it knew its foe, Thor son of Odin, god of thunder, would one day meet it in final battle. Above, the skies dimmed, for two wolves, Skoll and Hati, had long pursued the sun and moon across the heavens. Now, at last, they caught their prey. With snapping jaws, Skoll swallowed the sun. With a blood-red snarl, Hati devoured the moon. Darkness fell, not the soft darkness of night, lit by stars and silver beams, but an endless void. The skies grew empty, the world cold and blind. Men lit fires that gave no warmth. Gods lit torches that gave no comfort. The heavens themselves seemed hollow. And in that void, the stars vanished one by one, falling like embers into the abyss. And then came the sound, deep, resonant, shaking heaven and earth alike. The jeweler horn, Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, stood tall upon Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that spanned the worlds. His horn pressed to his lips, his white eyes blazing, his golden teeth glinting in the dim light. He blew with all his might. The sound carried through Asgard, through Midgard, through Jotunheim, through Hel. It echoed across the seas, through fire and ice, through every corner of the 9 realms. The time had come. Ragnarok had begun. From the south, beyond the realm of fire, came Surtur, the fire giant, his body a furnace, his hair a river of flame, his sword brighter than the sun that no longer shone. With each step, the earth burned. With each swing of his blade, the skies ignited. Behind him marched the sons of Muspel, giants wreathed in fire, their laughter like crackling wood, their breath like molten rock. They marched across Bifrost, and the rainbow bridge cracked, splintered, and shattered beneath their weight. The colors fell into the void, and the worlds groaned as their bond was broken. In Asgard, the halls shook, the golden roofs of Valhalla trembled. Odin rose from his throne. His spear, Gungnir, glimmered with the weight of fate. Around him, the Einherjar, the fallen warriors of Midgard, whom the Valkyries had carried to his hall, stood ready. Their armor gleamed, their swords were sharp, their hearts were steady. Thor tightened his grip upon Mjolnir. Lightning coursed through his veins, his eyes alight with storm. Freyr, fair god of harvest, took up his sword, though he knew he would face Surtur, and his fate was sealed. Tyr, the one-handed god of war, drew his blade. He would meet Garm, the hound of hell, and neither would return. Heimdall lowered his horn, and his eyes narrowed. He would face Loki, his shadowed brother, and their end would be each other's. Frigg wept in silence, but her tears were diamonds upon the floor. Freya loosed her cloak of falcon feathers, her eyes hard with sorrow and fury, and Odin, the All-Father, looked upon them all and whispered, "The time has come. Let us meet it with courage, for though we fall, the world will rise anew." The plain of Vigrid was vast, so vast that no eye could see its end. Grass had once grown there, green and waving in the wind, but now the earth was blackened, scorched by the fire of Muspel, churned by the feet of giants, and shaken by the howls of beasts. The sky above was no longer sky. It was smoke, thick and choking, lit only by the glow of fire and the crackle of lightning. The air stank of venom, of burning ash, of fear itself. It was here, upon this endless field, that gods and giants, beasts and monsters, would meet for the last time. On one side stood Asgard, Odin at the front, his ravens circling above, his wolves pacing at his feet. Behind him marched the Einherjar, thousands upon thousands, their shields gleaming, their voices chanting songs of old battles. Thor strode at his side, Mjolnir in hand, lightning dancing across his shoulders. His breath was thunder, his gaze unshakable. Freyr, fair and noble, stood ready though his hand trembled, for his sword, once radiant with power, would fail him against Surtur. Yet he did not falter. Tyr, with only one hand, gripped his weapon tightly, his jaw set with grim resolve. Heimdall watchful, the horn still echoing in the ears of the cosmos, waited for the shadow of Loki. And Frigg, Freya, and the goddesses of Asgard watched with hearts heavy as stone, knowing what was to come. Across the field, their enemies gathered. Fenrir towered above them all, his fur black as midnight, his eyes burning like suns of rage. Each breath scorched the earth, each growl split the sky. Beside him coiled Jormungandr, his body vast, its head rising like a mountain from the sea of corpses. Venom dripped from its fangs, hissing as it touched the soil, burning craters into the earth. Loki stood tall, his face twisted with fury and triumph, no longer the laughing trickster, but the betrayer, the shadow, the flame of chaos itself. Beside him marched the giants of Jotunheim, their steps shaking the plain. And from the south came Surtur, his sword ablaze, his form a storm of fire, his laughter echoing like the crackle of worlds burning. And in the distance, the hound Garm howled from the gates of hell, its cry shaking even the bravest hearts. There was no signal, no command, no moment of hesitation. The armies surged. The earth itself seemed to split as they collided, shields clashing, swords flashing, roars and screams filling the darkened sky. The Einherjar fought like storms unleashed, their blades biting into giant flesh, their shields splintering beneath monstrous blows. But for every giant that fell, two more rose, and for every beast that died, another struck. The plain ran red with blood, and still the battle raged. Odin strode forward, his spear Gungnir gleaming, his cloak billowing like storm clouds. Before him loomed Fenrir. The wolf roared, its jaw stretching wide, so wide they could swallow sky itself. Odin's ravens circled, crying out warnings. His wolves lunged, snapping at Fenrir's heels. But the wolf was too vast, too strong, too full of hate. With every strike, Gungnir pierced fur and flesh, yet Fenrir only roared louder. With every leap, Odin danced aside, but the wolf pressed closer. The All-Father's eye burned bright. He had known this moment would come. He had seen it in every vision, every dream, and still he fought. But destiny is not easily defied. With a final, terrible roar, Fenrir lunged. Its jaws closed around Odin, swallowing him whole. The sky itself wept. The earth groaned. The ravens screamed in despair. The Allfather was no more. Across the field, thunder clashed with serpent. Thor's hammer struck, lightning splitting the heavens. Jormungandr hissed, its coils lashing, its venom spilling like rivers of poison. The ground cracked beneath them. The seas surged onto the plain. Storm met storm. Fury met fury. Mjolnir shattered scales, crushed bone, and still the serpent rose. Thor's muscles strained. His breath came ragged, but he did not yield. At last, with a cry that shook the worlds, Thor lifted Mjolnir high. Lightning blazed brighter than Surtur's sword, and with one final strike, he crushed Jormungandr's skull. The serpent writhed, its body convulsing, its venom flooding the battlefield, and Thor, though victorious, staggered back. The poison filled his veins, burned his lungs, seared his heart. He stumbled, took 9 steps, and fell. The god of thunder lay still. Elsewhere, fire clashed with light. Freyr, fair and noble, faced Surtur. His blade shone bright, but he knew it was not enough. Surtur's sword blazed hotter than the sun, his laughter like the roar of firestorms. They clashed, steel against flame. Each strike blinded the battlefield, each blow shook the plain. But Freyr faltered. His sword broke. Surtur's flame engulfed him. The harvest god fell, and with him fell hope of plenty, hope of peace. Surtur raised his sword higher, and the skies burned. In the shadow of hell, Tyr met Garm. The hound roared, its breath stinking of death. Tyr raised his blade, his one hand steady, his eyes filled with calm. They leapt together, god and beast, fangs and steel flashing. Neither yielded, neither retreated. At last they struck as one, Tyr's blade piercing Garm's heart, Garm's jaws closing on Tyr's throat. They fell together, locked in death. And then came the Watchers. Heimdall, bright-eyed, steady, stood before Loki. Loki sneered, his laughter twisted. "Brother," he said, mocking, "watch now as your world ends." They clashed. Heimdall's blade flashed with purity. Loki's daggers danced with shadows. They struck, parried, bleeding, wounded. The plain shook with their duel. Each knew the truth. Neither would survive. At last, Heimdall struck. His blade pierced Loki's chest. But Loki's dagger slid into Heimdall's heart. They fell together, their eyes locked, their voices silent. The watchman and the trickster, brothers and enemies both, were gone. The battle had ended, but the world had not been saved. The field of Vigrid lay silent. The cries of gods, giants, and beasts had faded into echoes. The dust settled upon broken shields, shattered swords, and bodies that would never rise again. And in that silence, one figure moved. Sir, the fire giant, towering above the dead, raised his burning sword. The flames licked the sky, higher than the stars that no longer shone. His laughter rumbled like an endless inferno. This was no victory cry. This was destruction. This was the end. The sword of Surtur was unlike any weapon ever forged. It was fire made solid. The first flame born in the heart of Muspelheim. A flame older than the gods themselves. When he swung it, the air turned to ash. When he raised it, the heavens burned. He strode across Vigrid, and with each step the ground split, lava pouring from the cracks, consuming the bodies of the fallen. The rivers boiled, the mountains melted, the very soil shrieked as it died. No realm could escape his fire. High above, the golden halls of Asgard still stood, but only for a moment. Valhalla, with its endless feasts, its thousands of brave warriors, its shining walls, caught fire. The roof crumbled, the pillars collapsed, the halls became rivers of flame. Bifrost, already broken, shattered entirely, its colors falling like sparks into the void. The gods' home, once eternal, once untouchable, was gone. While fire consumed Asgard, the seas rose to claim Midgard. Jormungandr's corpse, though slain by Thor, thrashed one final time. Its coils shook the oceans. Its venom spilled into every river, every lake, every drop of water. The seas surged higher and higher, swallowing villages, forests, mountains. Men cried out to the gods for help, but no answer came. Their halls collapsed, their ships splintered, their lands vanished beneath the waves. Midgard drowned. Even Yggdrasil, the great world tree, could not stand against the end. His branches, which had stretched across the heavens, snapped one by one, falling like burning stars. Its roots, deep in the wells of Ord, Mimir, and Hvergelmir, quaked and tore apart. The wells boiled, their waters spilling into the void. The eagle at its crown shrieked, its wings burning, and Hgr, the dragon gnawing at its roots, howled in triumph. For at last, the tree itself fell, the axis of the worlds, the spine of creation, lay broken. And then, silence, no sun, no moon, no stars, no gods, only fire, only water, only ash. The realms were gone, the voices were gone, even time itself seemed to stop, suspended in the void. It was as though the universe had taken a final breath, and held it, never to exhale again. The 9 realms, once filled with laughter, with battle cries, with prayers and songs, were now nothing but shadows and memory. What remained was a darkness deeper than chaos. In the beginning, before gods and giants, there had been Ginnungagap, the yawning void. Now the worlds had fallen back into it. But this was not the same emptiness. It was heavier, darker, scarred by what had been lost. And yet, within that silence, something lingered, the embers of fire, the memory of water, the whisper of roots. The end had come, but it was not complete. The world was gone. Fire had scorched the heavens, waters had drowned the earth, and Yggdrasil, the great world tree, had fallen. And yet, the story did not end there. For even in death, life whispers. Even in silence, songs remain. Even after the last fire fades, ashes carry the promise of rebirth. From the ocean of ash, a faint light glowed. It was not the burning fury of Surtur's sword, nor the venomous glimmer of Jormungandr. It was softer, gentler, like the first light of dawn. The fire had destroyed much, but it had not consumed all. Beneath the waves, beneath the branches, beneath the ruins of the 9 realms, life endured. In hidden valleys, 2 figures stirred. In the shelter of Yggdrasil's roots, before they had been broken, 2 mortals had hidden. Their names were Lif and Lifthraser. Through the long darkness, they slept, wrapped in the protection of the tree's last breath. When the flames had passed, when the waters had calmed, they awoke. They emerged into a world, quiet and unfamiliar. The sky was empty, the lands were bare, and yet, there was air to breathe, water to drink, soil to touch. Hand in hand, they walked upon the silent earth. Her name meaning life, looked to the horizon and smiled. Lifthraser, lover of life, took her hand and whispered, "We are not alone. The world will live again." Together, they would bear children, and from them, a new race of humankind would rise. Though the skies were blackened, a new light began to shine. The old sun, devoured by the wolf skull, was gone. But her daughter, A younger, brighter sun had been waiting. She rose into the heavens, casting rays across the ruins. The flames softened to warmth, the waters shimmered with light, and the shadows retreated. Day returned to the world, and with it, hope. Though many gods had fallen, not all were lost. From the mists of hell's realm, a familiar figure stepped forth. Balder, the shining god, once slain by his brother's arrow, now returned. His presence was radiant, soothing the scars of the world. Beside him walked Hr, the blind god, his hand guided by Balder's light. They had been enemies once, but now they walked together, reconciled in peace. Other gods too survived. Vidar, silent avenger, who had slain the wolf Fenrir. Vala, the son of vengeance, untouched by Ragnarok. Me and Magni, the sons of Thor, carrying their father's hammer Mjolnir. Together, they gathered in the ruins of Idavol, the plain once at the heart of Asgard. Though their halls were gone, though their thrones were shattered, they stood side by side. And they knew the age of the old gods had ended. A new order would begin. The surviving gods looked upon the earth. They saw rivers flowing again, forests rising from the ash, and the children of Lif and Lifthrasir playing in the sunlight. They spoke quietly, their voices like the hum of the wind. The world is remade, said Vidar, but it must be guided. Balder lifted his gaze to the new sun, no longer with fear, nor with endless war. The mistakes of the old age must not return. They remembered Odin, who had sacrificed for wisdom. They remembered Thor, who had defended men until his last breath. They remembered Freyr, who had fallen for love of the land. And they swore an oath. The new world would not be ruled by pride or vengeance. It would be shaped by light, by balance, by memory of what had been lost. Idavol, once the site of Asgard's golden halls, was silent. But in that silence, flowers began to bloom. The grass turned green. Streams sparkled in the light of the new sun. The gods sat together on the soft earth, not on thrones of gold, but side by side. They spoke not of conquest, but of healing. They laughed softly, their voices mingling with the wind, and for the first time, the world felt peaceful. The poets of the north said, Ragnarok was the end, but it was also the beginning. For every dusk leads to a dawn. For every death, there is a birth. For every silence, a new song waits to be sung. The world had fallen into chaos, but from chaos rose order. The gods had perished, but from their memory rose wisdom. The flames had destroyed, but in the ashes, life had found a way. And yet, some say not all was lost in the fire. And Hgr, the dragon who gnawed at Yggdrasil's roots, was seen flying over the new lands, its wings heavy with corpses. Was it a shadow of the old world? A warning that evil endures? Or was it simply a reminder that no world is free of darkness? The poets did not agree, but they agreed on this. The story of gods and men is never truly finished. It changes, it shifts, it begins anew. This was the cycle. This was the truth. This was the eternal story. So ends the tale of Ragnarok, a twilight of gods, a storm of fire and water, an end, but also a beginning. For those who listened, let the story linger like a lullaby. Let the flames fade into embers. Let the waves calm into still waters. Let the silence cradle you. like the roots of Yggdrasil once cradled life. Close your eyes, breathe deeply, and remember, even when all seems lost, there is always dawn after night, always spring after winter, always renewal after the end. The gods may fall, the worlds may burn, but stories remain, and in stories, so too do the gods. Sleep now, under the watch of the new sun, and dream of Baldur's light, of green fields on Idavol, of rivers reborn, of laughter that echoes once more. For the end has passed, and the beginning awaits.